we look for something else. We look for alcohol, we look for drugs, some way to get away from that reality.
You end up with kids going to jail, kids raising themselves, kids killing themselves.
I don't think there's racism involved. I think it's strictly economic. You know, it's there because there's a need.
We learn from Standing Rock. They expect us to be violent. We know what to do now.
Case after case of beer loaded up and shipped out. For many, this image Monday morning becoming a symbol of hope and change.
Whiteclay, Nebraska, a tiny unincorporated town that sits on the border with South Dakota. With a population of just 14 people, its 4 liquor stores have for decades sold over 4 million cans of beer a year, almost entirely to members of the Ogallala Lakota Sioux tribe on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, where the sale of alcohol is banned. Pine Ridge is one of the poorest communities in America. Over 80% of people here are unemployed, and up to 2/3 of adults suffer from alcohol addiction. But at the beginning of this summer, following a spate of violence and unsolved murders, the stores were temporarily closed. The state Supreme Court is now considering whether to make the move permanent. Just a few meters down the road, a group of Lakota campaigners have camped out since the closure. They don't plan to leave until a final decision is made. For many here, Whiteclay has taken a personal toll.
That's where they found my uncle. My uncle's dead right there.
What happened to them?
Nobody really knows. They were just found murdered and mutilated right there. And it was after a rash of murders of people who stood in Whiteclay and drank alcohol. And it was such a dangerous place, so violent and dirty, and you know, it was really it was hell.
What do you think will happen if the Supreme Court decides against and keeps Whiteclay open?
Well, we expect it, for one thing. When have they ever considered us human beings? They think of us as childlike, not able to handle ourselves in a modern world. They expect us to do something and react in anger. We learn from Standing Rock. You know, we know what to do now.
The entrenched issues of addiction and poverty have led to a youth suicide rate that is 4 times the national average. We came to visit the reservation's only intervention program, run by 2 women out of a basement beneath a post office. They rely on grant money and worry things will get worse if a series of proposed budget cuts by the Trump administration are carried through.
Our res isn't a very good place. We hear about guns going off in the middle of the night while we're sleeping. We hear about our aunts and uncles being shot over drugs and stuff.
And do you have friends that did take their own lives?
Yes, I had more than 10 friends commit suicide.
In what space of time?
2015, 2014.
Are you worried this is going to get worse under Trump?
Yes, most definitely it's going to get worse under Trump, because he's already cut a lot of Native American programs. The children's come through that door and they're hungry. We go down to the park, they're hungry. They want something to eat. And it's not their fault.
This skate park, named after Tiny's grandson, Toby Eagleball, is one of the few places children can come to hang out.
He was killed in a car accident. He was driving, he didn't have a seatbelt on, and they were drunk, alcohol related. He got thrown from the car. So we started doing, and he loved to skateboard. And he was in college. To give him that better tomorrow, it takes a lot of people working together. You look at these kids, see how happy they are. You probably wouldn't know that some of these kids' parents are probably living on $5,000 a year. A year.
For most people here, the temporary closure of Whiteclay marked a victory against what they described as a continuing form of white oppression. The liquor stores, owned by families in Nebraska, made millions selling beer to people here.
That's fine. I'll be here in 30 days, bro. You can believe that.
Lauren L. Paul, a Sheridan County commissioner, voted earlier in the year to keep Whiteclay open. The State Liquor Commission then overruled the local government.
It seems to me they're looking for someone else to solve their issues, and that's probably not going to happen.
A number of people that we've spoken to, people who have spent time in Whiteclay, who have battled their own addiction issues, who have lost family members to alcoholism, describe the dynamic there as a sort of post-colonial hangover. It's a group of white families selling millions of cans of beer to Native Americans. Do you have any sympathy with that dynamic they describe?
What's happened there is what happens when you have free enterprise. If you have a demand, then somebody's probably going to step in to fill that.
So it's market forces, it's got nothing to do with race and racism?
I think absolutely right. It's market forces. I don't think there's racism involved. I think it's strictly economic. You know, it's there because there's a need.
In the summer since Whiteclay's closure, the tribal police have reported a surge in bootlegged alcohol. Like many public services here, the under-resourced and underfunded department that had 2/3 of its budget cut in a decade have struggled to cope.
Our biggest thing here is resources. Our officers are wore thin down. You know, right now there's 3 of us on. You know, it's a busy time of night. 60 miles east to west by about at least 90 miles north to south is the area that my 3 officers are covering tonight.
Not enough, right?
No.
How much has the bootlegging gone up since Whiteclay closed?
Tremendously, man. There's a bootlegger in every one of our little cluster housings in each of our districts. They're killing our people over greed and money. You know? At one point in time, we was a proud nation through genocide tactics, you know, taking our land, you know, giving us rations, you know, giving us handouts. It made us dependent. We look for something else. We look for alcohol. We look for drugs. Some way to get away from that reality.
A series of 911 calls led us to this home where 3 families with 8 children live in a 3-bedroom house. One uncle lies inebriated at the doorway.
Get up, guy.
Another family member is passed out at the back.
Wake up.
Do you ever think about why this happens here?
Sometimes you do, you know. Maybe they seen it growing up, something that they learned, or maybe they got to a point in their life where they don't feel that they can contribute anything anymore, so they drink to forget those things. I don't know. There's a lot of different reasons why. Taking them to jail ain't helping it, you know, because we're gonna be tomorrow night we'll take them to jail again. You know, next night take them again. You know, it's a revolving door all the time. So.
Tiny and Eileen often accompany police on domestic violence and suicide call-outs. But here, in the center of the reservation earlier in the week, no one got to 23-year-old Tyler Dubray in time.
You know, it's gonna be hard. Yeah. But this is what we want to do for him, you know?
Yeah. This is my best friend. I know.
This is a really hard thing. When our life is cut short, we don't have the answers. We don't know why. And in this particular case, we didn't see this one coming. Tyler was full of life. And when I first met him, I walked by him and I went back to him and I said, "My God, you're gorgeous." And he says, "I know." Duh. When a young child says, "I'm going to take my pain and leave," the pain stays here. It stays here with us. But know that you loved him unconditionally. Know that you were good to him. And you have no regrets for the way you treated him.
Tyler's suicide was the 11th in Pine Ridge since April. Before I left Pine Ridge, I came back to Camp Justice on the morning the Nebraska Supreme Court heard arguments on the Whiteclay case. The men and women here trespassed onto private land just outside the township to send a message of resistance.
I love it when I'm on my treaty land, not the concentration camp, the reservation, no. I'm a Lakota.
I remember our grandpa's always telling us, don't be afraid, you know? And it seems like that fear is what kept us back and really held us down for generations. So this teepee rising here represents the end of that oppression, the end of that colonialism, you know? And it represents that resurrection of the Lakota Tiwahi. That alcohol and white clay represents the destruction of that.
Sober Indian is a dangerous Indian!
Once we're sober and we regain our spirits, then our minds begin to heal, you know? We can use the American system against the Americans who try to oppress us even further. It just takes time and patience on our side.